So what this is called, it's a process called visual preferencing. And what this does is it asks communities to take a look at pictures of form and decide what they want. And if they want it, they're going to give it a plus score. If they don't want it or they don't find it attractive, they give it a negative score. Of course, things that have a positive score are things that you want and things that you should adopt as design standards because they're going to hold their value. And what we've seen over time, and this has been replicated in studies across the nation for Realtors Association and others, basically saying if you build forms that people value, it's going to hold its value and it's going to grow in value. People are going to love it. And at the end of this, I've got a portion of our community which I'll bring forward as an example that I think will prove this rule. So in these slides that move forward, you're going to see, again, the score, and you're going to see a little standard deviation. This is from a process done in Billings, Montana. A lot of these pictures are from Billings. Some of them are illustrations, and some of them are from other communities. But basically, we put 300 people in a room in Billings, a cross-section of the community, and asked them to go through this process. Is it fit for our community, or does it not fit for our community? So there's our first example. It's a +6. So again, positive. It's got a lot of green space associated with it. You know, trees, you can see there, street lights. This focuses on, again, trails out in a rural environment, a bike trail. People liked that in this area. This is an interesting slide because in Billings, this was actually a high-end residential development. So you can see that the homes here have brick facades. They have articulated roofs. The design standards here were fairly high, but the scoring for the community actually was fairly negative. It's a 0. So if you're going to put this kind of money into a development, you really should put it into you would expect a much higher score. So here has been money cost that has been spent that did not create value. And the whole point is we're trying to actually get, if you're going to spend money, it should create long-term value for you. Again, rural mobile homes, not seen it as amenity to the community. Parking lots, large parking lots without any kind of landscaping. These auto-oriented development where all you see are the vehicles and the carports, you know, again, seen as negative. Now, one of the challenges, of course, is you look down this street, it's full. So it's not like people didn't buy these houses. They're living there. The challenge is whether that's going to be sustainable long-term. Multifamily development, -5. Commercial development with very low sort of landscaping standards and low development standards. It's they call this the garage is the front nose development, and all you see is the garage is -7, so extremely negative. But again, there are trucks in several of those parking lots. This is full. People will live there. The builder made some money on this development, but the long-term value is not likely to be there. Here you add some landscaping and some monument signs, and you move up to a +2. Again, the trees take that sea of asphalt and turn it into a +3. And here's where it starts to get interesting. This is actually an older area of Billings, Montana, and this is the 1950s, and I always like to say that we forgot what we used to know. Building back in the 1950s, that's what people want. And so here you have an area that's not really expensive, but simply the building form is something that people find attractive. Street trees, a planting strip, sidewalks. And here's something that was interesting for me. You have a fairly dense form, softened by some landscaping and some setback, and it's a +4, even in Billings, Montana, which is used to a rural standard. So if you build things right, you can get high density, even in a rural area, and people will find that acceptable. Again, planting and monument signs. Here's a parking area where you have some trees and some shrubbery to park it off, to separate it off. This is actually consistent with a standard that's now included in our UDO. Street trees, nice urban environment, +6. Walkable areas, again, higher density with some softening up front. Now here's one of these comparisons. This is an area you can see it's a 0. It's basically a degrading environment. And here's an illustration where you add in the planting strip and the amenities, and very quickly, for a little bit of money, we took this from a 0 to a +6. That's creating value for very little cost, just adding some landscaping. So that's kind of, as we look at the standards we're creating, we follow that model to try and say, okay, what are we trying to create? And one of the things I always sort of bring for this is that just because it sells doesn't mean that it's something that people want. People really liked, and still do, look for those grid pattern communities that exist out there. And if you look at our community, go look at the Haymont area. It's the best connected grid and pattern area, sidewalks in most of it. It's certainly not, doesn't follow that standard completely, but it is one of those areas of our community that has held its value and has continually promoted redevelopment and investment over time.